What is one rule that was implemented at your school or work that backfired horribly? My senior year of high school we got moved into a new school building across from a grocery store. The builders put walls up over the plumbing for water fountains by accident, so there was a huge increase in reusable water bottles, and the school put up a vending machine entirely full of water. Now I suppose it's time to mention that this was in Washington state, where you can sell liquor in grocery stores along with anything else. So some freshmen got the bright idea to start stealing vodka from the store, access the street, fill disposable water bottles with it, and sell it to other students. This caused a huge problem with the large population of drunk underclassmen wandering the halls of the school and getting into trouble. Finally the staff got together for a meeting about what to do. Someone suggested banning water bottles, so now students had no access to water during school hours, and everyone was enraged. There were articles written about it and parents complaining. People all over town were talking about how we had a ban on water. They eventually lifted the ban, and the vodka problem resumed. This was just one kid, but it was hilarious. In the late 90s, humorous graphic tees became a popular thing, and the mall had a few stores that sold questionable taste shirts, shoots that said P-star, orgasm donor, a headless guy holding a sign that says will work for head, that type of thing. The school made a rule that if your shirt was inappropriate, you would have to turn it inside out. A kid in my class shows up to school with a shirt that says I'd rather be masturbating. The teacher sends him to the bathroom to turn it inside out. He returns with an inside out shirt that says I put the FU in fun. The teacher doesn't realize it's the same shirt, so he takes it off in class and shows her both sides. He had a few shirts custom made with prints on both sides. She asks him if he has another shirt in his locker and he says I have my gym clothes. She told him to go get the other shirt and change. He walks back into the class with a shirt that says you're driving me knucking futs. The teacher said just go to the office. So he goes to the office and tells them that he was sent there because of his shirt. So they say turn it inside out and go back to class. So he turns his shirt inside out and walks back into the class with a shirt that says free mustache rides. She said did you go to the office, and he said they told me to flip it inside out and come back to class. The teacher sighed and said just sit down. She went about teaching and we thought he won, but he ended up getting suspended for 3 days. When he returned from suspension, he wore shirts for probably a whole week that said, I love teachers, support your local teachers union, cops are the good guys, drugs are bad, wash behind your ears, etc. It was funny because he made these overtly positive shirts and the teachers and students would try to read into it too much to see what they really meant, as if it was just a tongue-in-cheek thing that they didn't get. Eventually one of his positive shirts that he found said support single moms, but he claims he didn't realize that there was a silhouette of a stripper on a pole. He says he thought it was just a woman, so he got suspended again. As a side note, the same kid bought a blow-up doll and took her to every football game, basketball game, pep rally, etc. and gradually worked her into official school functions and brought her to school several times. For whatever reason, the teachers just gave up on that one. We passed her around over our heads at graduation. He even bought her a cap and gown. My middle school had a no touching rule, which meant you'd get suspended for high-fiving a friend. Girls got in trouble for hugging their friends. Our teachers thought this was ridiculous and would have students high-five each other in their classes for a minute every day. So many kids got suspensions that the rule stopped being enforced and only counted if you touched a kid in a bullying situation. In my dorm, if you did something that triggered the smoke fire alarm, you had to do a safety presentation for everyone on your floor. This was intended to deter pranksters from pulling the alarm. A guy on our floor was making grilled cheese in the kitchenette and burned it, which legitimately triggered the fire alarm. Afterwards, he explained, assuming that since it had been a legitimate alarm and not a prank, that he wouldn't have to do a presentation. He was, of course, wrong. So, the next Wednesday night, the entire floor assembled, and we were treated to a 30-minute safety presentation on the dangers of grilled cheese sandwiches. It contained literally nothing about fire safety. It was all choking hazards and cholesterol. Our RA was furious, but the student pointed out that the write-up that he'd been given just said safety presentation. We didn't get any more presentations after that. My high school made students wear these neon t-shirts that read dress code violator if their outfit didn't adhere to the school's policy. They became so popular the school began selling them 1 week later. We got a new manager for our office. She was an outside hire and was trying to prove herself quickly, and she was obsessed with efficiency. So, her first week here she sent out this very rudely worded email about employees eating at our desks. We have a very small break area for tables and we have about 300 employees here, and that we all had to stop eating at our desks because it was not efficient to eat and try to work at the same time. Through a coordinated effort by some of the more sassy people at the office, they all had their lunches at the same time and filled the break room with about 90 people, elbow to elbow, and they all ate standing up. Literally, the next day after that happened, she sent out a follow-up email saying that we could eat at our desks, but she advised us to take a break from our work from time to time. School I attended emailed the entire student body to not use Yik Yak because students were being bullied on it. All of the students, myself included, who hadn't heard of the app immediately downloaded it and began using it. New manager got rid of the sofa in the break room so people couldn't nap on their hour-long lunch break. No one overslept or took the pee, but it was good to have the option on a tough day. Stoner guy started sleeping in other places, including in between walls and in the warehouse. That's when we started losing him and couldn't find him, as he'd go into a deeper sleep and was less likely to be disturbed. He didn't lose his job somehow. That place had a hard time hiring. At a former job, software development, there was a foosball table. People would play reasonably often, but just one game to take a break. One day, management came down to the software engineering floor and saw people playing foosball in the middle of the afternoon. They declared no foosball until 4:30 PM. That ended up making it so that everybody knew when there would be other people wanting to play foosball, so it was much easier to find somebody willing to play and significantly increase the amount of foosball played at work. High school took all the stall doors off the boys' bathrooms because of graffiti or something, so I started pooping in the bathroom near the office. After a couple of times of the superintendent coming in while I was doing that, all the doors were put back on. Maintain eye contact and nod as the superintendent walks by. I worked for a place that did RMA repairs on PCs. Most of our clients were businesses like hospitals and factories. Anyway, as I was touring the workshop during my orientation, the guy taking me around took me to the QA department. Once all builds or repairs are made, they're sent to the QA department for a final inspection before going out to the customer. The guy jokingly said we used to pay the QA guys bonuses for every mistake they found on a build. I started laughing. The only problem was it wasn't a joke. They actually paid bonuses to the QA people who found mistakes on builds. For anyone not familiar with the internal workings of a PC, it could take less than 3 seconds to completely render a computer inoperable. Heck, you could loosen a connection just by inspecting it. Luckily that policy ended before I was hired. I mean, can you imagine giving someone a bonus for finding screw ups when it would take almost no effort to make a screw up and then claim you found it? You now need 40 hours of community service to graduate. It's recommended that all freshmen do 10 hours a year, while the seniors start as soon as possible to get the 40 hours out of the way. The rule was gone the day before graduation because they would have had less than a 10% graduation rate that year, and it would have made the school look terrible. They did this to try to increase their reputation of being a good school. All the other schools in the area are trash though, so I really don't know why. I'm a programmer. On a previous job, the developers and teams were measured by the number of feature requests they completed. We figured out to subdivide everything to blow it up into the maximum number of feature requests possible. A manager might request a new report. We'd set up separate feature tickets for create button, make button blue, make button respond when clicked, implement business logic, display results in grid, allow sorting of grid, and so on. We'd subdivide a one-day task into 21-hour tasks. Management loved it. Our team looked 20 times as productive, despite deliberately slowing ourselves down with red tape. My high school told my senior class, no senior pranks or none of you walk HA. Result, we didn't throw a prank. Instead, we threw biggest rager of the year on school property with the permission of the county sheriff, as long as we took our bottles with us when we finished. The sheriff retired the next week. He was the real one. Aftermath. The administration was peed as heck but couldn't pin it on the senior class because Sheriff Rick couldn't remember what kids were there. My old job had a draconian attendance policy in which if you were a second late, you got a 1/2 point demerit. If you were an hour late, you got that same 1/2 point demerit. Demerits accrued. 3 equals verbal warning. 4 equals written. Either 5 or 6 was termination. In addition to making for some anxiety-filled employees that made dumb decisions to speed through snowstorms, it also meant if you got stuck in a traffic jam, you might as well just take your time, stop for gas, get breakfast, etc. Same place also had a similar policy that assured the plague spread through the whole place. Say you came to work at 7. By 9 AM you've got a fever and full-blown flu symptoms. If you clock out then, you get a whole point demerit. But if you sit there coughing and shivering and infecting your co-workers for another 2 hours, till your shift was half over, you only got a half point demerit. They started a no gum rule that made a lot of junior high kids start a black market for gum. This has probably happened lots of times. One of my teachers spotted a guy chewing and gave him the usual "well, I hope you brought enough for everybody," whereupon he got up with a fistful of gum and started handing it out. She didn't send him to the principal, but she never tried that line again. My junior high school adopted a policy to not allow kids to loiter in groups of 5 or more, in attempts to crack down on gang mentality. This was freaking junior high. Anyway, me and my group of misfits, 6 of us, were always hanging out during free times, and the principal eventually stopped us and asked us to separate. I had to casually explain to him that we were not a group of 6, but 2 groups of 3 that were intermingling. People caught wind and that rule was basically dead. That was one of the few times I had to explain to my father why he was called into the principal's office with me. "I'm sorry to bring you in, sir, but I think you'll want to hear this. Your son has more than 3 friends. You really should be ashamed of how you've raised him." Double quote. A local pharmacy was built on the same street as my school, and local pharmacies get robbed a couple times a year where I live. To make our school more secure, they started locking every door and making it punishable by detention for any instance of a student opening an outside door for someone else during school hours. Everyone had to go through the front doors to the lobby to show it and sign in before they got into the actual school. I liked how secure the school was, but when our principal was walking superintendents around to show them our new media production and medical sciences wing of the school, they got locked out after stepping outside to look at an outdoor set. That spot was on the complete opposite side of the school from the front office. During class change they tried knocking on the door to get a student to open it. Everyone ignored them and followed the rules. Those old men and ladies had to walk around the school in 95-degree, 90% humidity weather sweating their suits off. Our principal did commend all the students for following the rules at the next school assembly and said he was proud to show how safe the school was. Cool dude. We have a similar policy where outside doors are locked and people have to be screened in through the front door. The only issue is, when you come to the front, they just let you in without checking in it or anything. It's just extra walking. My company, as part of its alcohol policy, said you should not drink for at least 4 hours before coming to work. When engineers got called about production problems over the weekend, they all just had a beer but could be there in about 4 or 5 hours. No running during recess. It was made because some kid in the 2nd grade ran and tripped, so for whatever reason, they restricted running for all grades K-5. Everyone should know that when you ask a 5-10-year-old to not do something, that's the next thing they're going to do. They started running in the halls, the cafeteria, the classrooms, and you bet your butt they ran outside. After a week, the teachers stopped enforcing it and everyone stopped caring. An insane amount of time and hand-wringing went into my office's dress code policy. When the final draft was ultimately released, every department head had a valid reason why their staff should be exempted, so the policy wound up only affecting myself and the guy that insisted on making the policy. I violate this policy on a daily basis. When I was in kindergarten, during the morning announcements one day they came on and said, "And please no throwing snowballs. There is a chance you might accidentally get some rocks in them." You could see on the faces of all 20-some students the realization that OMG we could put rocks in them. I went to a private school for elementary, where uniforms were strict. If you didn't wear a belt you'd go to the principal's office and he would make you use a shoestring. Well, when he opened the drawer there was like 6 different colors and everybody thought it was really neat, so for a short period of time there was a bunch of kids coming to school with no belt so they could wear their lime green shoestring belt. My high school has a policy where you couldn't wear hats at school unless the school's mascot logo was on it. So a bunch of people just bought a patch of the logo and paper-clipped them to their hats. My dad was a corpsman with the Marines doing high desert training in the Mojave. They had a big problem with unidentified snake bites, i.e. people would get bit but not identify the snake. So it was hard to find the right antidote. So my dad got all the Marines in a room and said, if you get bit by a snake, bring it back here so we can identify it. Not even a full week later they had to alter the wording a bit, because a Marine was bit by a rattlesnake and decided to bring it back without killing it. This man had carried this snake all the way back to base alive, and the snake decided to let him know exactly how he felt about that by repeatedly biting his arm the entire time. Needless to say, that Marine went home, and they made sure to hold another meeting where they told everyone to kill the snake, then bring it back. Like this video and this good boy will play you a nice song. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.